It happened on the big Sunday, right before the biggest Sunday. You know what I'm talking about? On the Christian calendar, the biggest Sunday, hands down, is Easter Sunday. But the Sunday before that is still a pretty big Sunday, Palm Sunday. Palm Sunday. It happened on that Sunday. It's the Sunday. It's the Sunday that leads into Holy Week. You know, when we remember Jesus' life and his sacrifice, his death, his resurrection. You may know it as the Sunday when all the kids come in here and wave their palm branches. It's that Sunday. That's the Sunday it happened. Mom and Dad woke up a few minutes earlier to make sure that Johnny and Susie, not their real names, hidden for security purposes, were looking good and ready to go that day at church. You know, Johnny needs some help making sure that the clothes actually matched and, getting the shirt tucked in. He had some problems like I do. And Susie, she really wanted one of those pretty braids in her hair that day. So they get done with all that, and they're in the car, and they're driving to church. And maybe a lot like your drive when you're coming here. You know, everything's pretty nice. Everything's pretty good. And, a cup of coffee in hand. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a fight breaks out in the back seat. You know, Johnny's got Susie's braid in his hand. She lets out this screechy scream out of a horror movie, and then Mother Bear turns her around. And in her most bossly, beastly voice says, "If you do not let her braid go right now, you will not be waving palm branches." Johnny, he thought about it for a minute. I mean, you got to weigh that out. You know, what's really worth it? But at the end of it, it was more worth it to him to let it go, wave the palm branches, and just hit the girls next to him with his palm branch later that morning. They pull into church and find a place to park and get out of the car and come in and find their seats, sit down. Church, everything looked a little bit nicer that day for some reason. Not really sure why. Maybe it was because Easter was in a week. You know, maybe spring was in the air. Maybe it was all the little girls with braids in their hair. I don't know. But the pastor comes up on stage and he welcomes everyone to this Palm Sunday, to the beginning of Holy Week, one of the most significant, important weeks in the life of the church. And the people are on their feet, they're singing and they're praising God, just like we were a moment ago. And they're singing these wonderful hymns that speak about the richness of Jesus. And it was beautiful. And then the bomb went off. Survivors would later describe it as, 1 second people are standing, singing, praising God, and in an instant the room was filled with smoke. There were fires everywhere. The white pillars in the room were covered and stained in blood. There was over 25 people that died almost instantly and countless more injured. It all happened at St. George's Church, just a little ways north of Egypt in Anta, one of the biggest cities there. And shortly thereafter, just a couple of short hours later, straight west of there in Alexandria on the Mediterranean, there's another church, St. Mark, where a second attack would be made. This time, the bomb wasn't planted underneath the chair. This time, the bomb was strapped to his waist. And as the man approached the church building, the security guards out front of the church saw something that wasn't right about him. I don't know what it was. Maybe a look on his face. Maybe they saw a bulge under his shirt. I don't know. But they stopped him from entering into the church building. That didn't stop him, though. He fought his way, and as he's charging the church building, and as they're keeping him on the outside from going in, he detonates the bomb. Many more die. The place is destroyed. Countless are injured. That day, Palm Sunday, 2017, this is at least 45 or more people died, and who knows how many injured. There is something that those Christians in Egypt, as well as many Christians in various other places around the world for that matter, there's something that they know very, very well, that being a Christian comes with a price. We've spent the month of July going through 1 Peter. Each week we've looked at the next chapter. Next week we're going to wrap up the whole thing. Today we're in chapter 4. And as Peter writes to these people, I just want to remind you that when he writes to these Christians in Asia Minor, one of the things he knows that they're going through is suffering of various kinds. A lot of the suffering that those Christians are facing is the exact same type of suffering that we'll talk about in a minute that you face and I face, insults and things of that nature. But some of those Christians, they too experience a suffering of a different level, a suffering of death. Peter himself would die as a martyr. And they know well that Christianity comes with a price. But Peter says this to him, hey, I know you're going to suffer, but here's the thing, it's okay. It's okay because you're blessed if you do. Let me back up a couple. It's just up on the screen. Let me back up a couple verses in chapter 3 just to kind of set the stage for you before we jump into chapter 4 today. And Peter says this, hey, but even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear their threats. Do not be frightened. For it is better if it is God's will to suffer for doing good than for evil. See, they too know that they're going to suffer, but what they need to hear and be reminded of and encouraged with, just like we do today, and we'll look at it, what the Christians in Egypt need to maybe hear and be reminded, it's not that they're going to suffer. They know that. It's this. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And today I want us to think about this idea that following Jesus comes with a price. There is a price to pay when we follow Jesus, but it is worth it. It's worth every penny. It's worth whatever cost we pay. Jesus himself would talk about the cost of following him. Luke tells us one time that this large crowd is traveling with Jesus. And the fact that there's a large crowd with Jesus in and of itself is not a problem, right? There's plenty of room in the kingdom of heaven. That's not the issue there at all. But Jesus knows, man, this many people following me. I mean, they must be here for all sorts of different reasons. I need to let them know this. Hey, can I have everyone's attention? I need everyone, if you could squeeze in. Come here for a minute. I need to tell you something. Just sit down, make some room. Everybody move into the center. And we got a big crowd today, but I want you to know that if you want to follow me, you need to hate your own mother and father, your husband, wife, your son, your daughter, even your own life, if you want to follow me. Did he say hate? Yeah, okay. It's hyperbole. With uneducated, illiterate people, it might have posed a problem for Jesus, but I think that they knew. It's Semitic language too. They know this idea of hate means that you love far less those people than me. Jesus says, let me explain another way. Here's what I'm saying. Many of you're following the values and priorities that your mom and dad have passed down to you, or the expectations that your spouse puts on you, or you just come up with your own. And here's the thing, if you follow me, I want you to take on my values and my priorities. I want them to become yours. See, I'm not like something that you attach to your keychain and throw in your pocket and just carry me around with you like I'm some, good luck charm in your pocket. That's not how this works. I want you to take on my way of life and make it your way of life. Jesus would say it would be like a builder. He'd say, you've got to count the cost of following me. If someone's gonna build a building, first they calculate, do I have enough money and resources to finish the project? You've got to count the cost, because if I start to build this building and I run out of money or resources, then I can't finish it and I'm going to lose everything. It's not going to be worth it. All I'm going to have is this 5-story cement slab with rebar sticking out the top right across the street from Chandler Mall. And it's going to be there for maybe about a decade. And millions of people are going to drive down 101. They're all going to see this building. And Jesus says this, the onlookers, they're going to ridicule you. They're going to be like, who built this? What was he thinking? He didn't think this through. He didn't calculate this out right. Well, everything he dumped in this, he's lost it all. And now we've got this hideous eyesore that we've got to deal with until it got bulldozed down to the ground. Or like a king, a king would first calculate before he goes into battle, is it gonna be worth it? Am I gonna gain anything at the end of this? Because if not, it's not worth it. I'm just gonna lose, all these people are gonna die, I'm gonna spend all this money and resources, and that's stupid. So Jesus says, I want you to count the cost. Think about the price that you're gonna pay to follow me, and if it's worth it to you. If it's worth it. And here's the thing, most of us, we do not suffer the way, those in Egypt do. I never wake up in the morning thinking, I wonder if today I'm gonna die a martyr. Never crosses my mind. Maybe someday it will. Maybe things will totally radically change. I don't know. But here in the West, right, I don't live that way. But we do face other types of suffering, don't we? There's other ways that we have a cost to pay for following Jesus, a price that comes with it, ways that people insult you, ways that people mock you, ways that people abuse you or exclude you or ostracize you or criticize you. And in those ways, we need to count this cost. So look over chapter 4, verse 1, and we'll jump into 1 Peter 4, 1, and he says this, "Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin." So Peter says this, hey, therefore, remember, since you're gonna be suffering, guess what? Christ also suffered. And so Peter says, just do this. Just when you suffer in the same way that Jesus suffered. Have his mindset, his perspective, his attitude about suffering, have it be the same as yours when you suffer, which of course begs the question, well, what is that? So that's good that you asked. And it is this, that it is better to obey and suffer than to disobey and sin. That's Jesus's perspective on suffering. In fact, the truth is Jesus would even take it a step further, right? Jesus would say, it's better to obey and suffer and even die than to disobey sin and live. So here's what this means. It means that we should expect suffering. We shouldn't be surprised when we suffer. Jump down to verse 12 in chapter 4. And Peter says this, "Dear friends, do not be surprised at the fiery ordeal that has come on you to test you, as though something strange were happening to you." It's not strange. That's just part of the price that you pay when you follow Jesus. Verse 13, "But rejoice inasmuch as you participate in the sufferings of Christ, so that you may be overjoyed when his glory is revealed. If you are insulted because of the name of Christ, you're blessed. For the Spirit of glory and of God rests on you. If you suffer, it should not be as a murderer, thief, or any kind of criminal, or even as a meddler. However, if you suffer as a Christian, do not be ashamed, but praise God that you bear that name." See, suffering can happen by anyone, right? Anyone can try to make us suffer, but it hurts. It hurts the most when it's our friends and family member. Anybody can judge you and condemn you, criticize you, make fun of you, mock you for being a Christian, exclude you because of your faith, malign you. Anybody could do those things. It can happen by it, but it hurts. It hurts when it's friends and family. I think it's part of the reason why Jesus mentioned those people a moment ago. It's why Jesus says, it's your mother and your father, your husband, wife, your brother, your sister, your children. Those are the people that you love the most. Those are the people that love you the most. And those are the people that when they don't agree with you, when they don't like that you are following Jesus and they are not, when they abuse you, when you suffer at their hand, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt. Maybe some of you have a spouse right now, and it's like anytime you bring up something spiritual, you just kind of get the eyes rolled at you. That's not a big deal in and of itself. I know that, but maybe sometimes it's far worse than that. And you hesitate every time you want to share something that God's doing in your life or share something meaningful in a spiritual way with your spouse. Man, these words come out of my mouth, I am going to be criticized in some way. Maybe some of you have a mom or a dad, and you know that when you call them up, you might as well not even bring up God, bring up church, your faith, Christianity, any of that, because they're going to get angry. They're going to get angry. They're going to start yelling at you. They're going to say, no, I don't want to hear about that stuff. That's your thing. They're going to treat you as if you're so stupid for believing the things that you believe, so foolish for living the way that you live. And so you've just learned, you know what, I'm just not even going to bring it up anymore. Maybe some of you have a brother or sister that just mocks you because you live this way following Jesus and they live this way according to all the values and priorities of this world, and they mock you. Maybe some of you have a child, your own son or daughter, that, man, they let you have it, right? I mean, they disrespect you, but they also just let you know how angry they are that while all their other friends can go to these parties and go to these places, you're not letting them do that. And they let you know how disgusted, how angry they are with your conviction that they can't go party in the way that they want to. And it hurts. That hurts. Maybe some of you just have a friend that says, I remember the time in your life, man, we used to hang out and party and go to clubs. And why don't you do that anymore? Let's go. And you tell them why, and you just get insulted and made fun of for it. Maybe some of you are in school, and if you're in high school or college or any of that, and you're saying, I'm choosing to follow Jesus, there's a price to pay. That comes with a cost. Because when you say, I have this conviction of purity in my life, man, all your friends at school, they let you know how much of a loser you are. When you're not just going around sleeping with everybody or with anybody, they let you know there's something wrong with you. And you're criticized, and you're mocked, and you're made fun of. And it hurts. It hurts. Maybe some of you have a coworker friend, and they know you're a Christian. They know it. And any chance they get to just kind of take sort of like a little dig at you, a little jab to just kind of poke fun at your faith because you choose to follow Jesus, man, they just jab it in there. And they're relentless about it. And it hurts. You don't totally get used to that. Or maybe even worse, you have a boss, and your boss knows that you're a Christian. They know that. And you know that some of the time, the reason why you're excluded from certain things, it's because of your faith. I mean, they don't say that, but you know that that's why. And it sure doesn't feel good to be the one left out. Or maybe you can't even advance in the company the way that you want to advance. Or maybe even worse, maybe some of you have lost a job. And the real reason why I was let go was because I followed Jesus. And when we suffer in those ways at the hands of friends and family and people like that, it hurts. And you're thinking, God, I'm doing the best I can here. I'm trying to follow you and obey you as best I can. So why am I experiencing so much suffering? Why is this so hard when I'm trying to do the right thing and obey you and follow you? And you see, that's exactly it. That's the whole thing. There is a direct correlation between your obedience and your suffering. There's a direct correlation. Let's go back to verse 1. And we'll read verses 1 through 4. Therefore, since Christ suffered in his body, arm yourselves also with the same attitude, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. As a result, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives for evil human desires. No, you are rather living for the will of God. For you have spent enough time in the past doing what pagans chose to do, living in debauchery and lust and drunkenness and orgies, carousing and detestable idolatries. Can you imagine, just real quick, can you imagine this? I mean, try to picture a world in the first century where people lived sleeping around with whoever they want, getting drunk at parties and being lawless. I mean, can you imagine? Nothing's changed. Verse 4. You're taking me way too seriously. Verse 4. They are surprised. They are surprised that you do not join them in their reckless, wild living. And here it is again, and they heap abuse on you for it. Do you have friends like this? They heap abuse on you for it. He says, whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. We'll come back to that in a minute, but for now, I just want to say, done with sin doesn't mean that you're perfect and you never sin. What he's saying is that you've chosen to say, Jesus, I'm going to follow you. I'm going to live a life of obedience your way. That's what that is. And he's saying when you choose that, when you choose to follow Jesus and say, Jesus, I want to obey you and live your way, then suffering will come. Then you will pay a price. There's a cost that comes with that. There's a direct correlation between your obedience and how much you suffer. And some of you may think, you may come to a point or place where you say, you know what, I don't know if it's worth it anymore. You know, the suffering, it's hard, obviously. It doesn't feel good. It hurts. I don't like it. And maybe I keep getting called by my buddy. He keeps wanting me to go to a club with him. Maybe I should just, the next time he calls, maybe I'll be like, all right, let's go. Maybe I'll just step back into that life of sin, because at least then it'll be a little bit easier and I can stop paying this price of following Jesus. Let me remind you today, if we do that, of the price of sin, the cost of sin. Sin will always cost you more than you want to pay. And it will always promise you far more than it will ever deliver. And it will always take you far further than you ever wanted to go. It's been that way ever since the beginning. Adam and Eve in the garden, God says, hey, the whole thing yours, it's all enjoy, have fun, name it all, eat it all. Hey, one tree, don't eat from this tree. If you eat from that tree, here's the cost that you pay. You will die. So stay away from that tree. Okay, have a great life. Satan comes along and says, hey, Adam and Eve, did God say that you can't eat from this tree? And Eve says, yeah, God says that I can't eat from the tree, or if I eat it or touch of it, then I will die. And Satan says, you will not die. In other words, he's saying that is not the real cost of sin. It's not that bad, but sin always costs us more than we want to pay. Eve does eat of the tree. She believes him. Oh, it's not going to cost me that? Well, maybe it's not so bad then. She eats of it. You know the price that she pays? Death, just like God said. Satan says, no, that's not the price you're not going to die. God just knows. God knows. If you eat of the tree, then you're going to be just like him. You know, then you're going to know right from wrong. You're going to have God-like powers, Eve. What do you think of that? God-like powers? That's awesome. This is incredible. God didn't tell me. I had no idea. No. Sin promises more than it can deliver. Eve eats of the tree. She does not get God-like powers. You know what she gets? Fear and shame and a sense of inadequacy that comes from failure. That's what she gets. And we've all been struggling with it and dealing with it ever since. It'll cost you more than you want to pay. It'll promise you more than you can deliver, and it will take you further than you ever wanted to go. Adam and Eve, I'm sorry, you have to leave the garden now. You have to go, and you can never return. That is the cost of sin. Sin, here's the whole point of that. Sin is never worth it. It's not worth it. And when the buddy keeps calling you up, hey, let's go, let's hit the club, let's go back, you've got to remind yourself, no. Maybe I'm suffering. I'm paying a price in following Jesus, but there is a greater price, a greater cost of sin that I do not want to pay. Let me give you 3 reasons why following Jesus is worth it. 3 reasons why it is worth it, okay? Here's the first one. You've changed. You've changed, and now you know. Check this out. Go back to verse 1. Actually, just look at, or it's up on the screen. This will make it easier. Because, Jesus says, Peter says, because whoever suffers in the body is done with sin. Circle, underline that. Done with sin. You're done with that. For you have spent enough time in the past, circle, underline, in the past, doing what pagans choose to do. In other words, Peter's like, hey, you've lived that way. You've sinned in that way. You know it's not worth it. You've changed. You are a new person, a different person. And yeah, it may be hard. You may be suffering right now in a pretty tough way. It may be a big price to pay, but you've changed and you know that other way of living is not worth it. Remember the movie Matrix, 1999, the original. Such a great movie. So there's this guy, Neo, and he's living life one way, but he knows there's this whole other way of living, this whole other reality. And so he's going through life, going through his day-to-day, but something's not right in him, and he just knows there's this whole other way to live, and he's kind of searching for it and looking for it, and these people come along, and they basically kidnap him. They put him in a car. We find out they're good people, and they're driving him down the street, and they're like, hey, we want to show you this other way of living, this other like type of reality that you're searching for. We want to show it to you. But he kind of gets freaked out. He's a little scared and nervous, and he says, stop the car. So they stop the car. And he opens the door, and he's just about to get out and leave, and the camera pans down this dark street. And before he steps out of the car, the girl grabs his arm and says, Neo, you've been down that road and you know where it leads. Meaning that is a dead-end road. That road leads nowhere. That way of living is worthless. Come find out a better way to live. You have changed. And if you're feeling lured or pulled back into an old type of sin, an old way of living, however that might be happening, remember, it is not worth it. You've lived that way in the past. It's a worthless way. It's a dead-end road. You've changed. And some of you today, maybe you haven't. Maybe you're not done with that sin. Maybe right now you're struggling. You've got one foot in and one foot out, and you're kind of following Jesus, and you're kind of not, and you're not sure, and you're not done with it. And could today be the day that you say, I'm going to change? It's never too late to change. Today could be the day where you say, that's it. Today I choose to be done with that sin. Today is the first day of the rest of my life. Everything up to today is in my past. I'm going to follow Jesus, whatever the cost, whatever the price, because he's worth it. I'm going to be changed, and I'm going to live a changed life, which leads right into the second reason that following Jesus is worth it. Not just because you've changed, but because life is short. Life is short. Look at verse 2. Remember when we read this? As a result, Peter says, they do not live the rest of their earthly lives, circle, underline, for evil human desires, but rather for the will of God. The end of all things is near. Life is short. How are you going to live the rest of it? James in chapter 4 talks about this, picks up on this idea that life is short, and he says, your life is Febreze. Well, he actually says, if you read in your Bible, it says your life is a mist or a vapor. But in Greek, it means Febreze. So what he's saying is, it's just, life is short. I mean, 1 minute you're here, and the next, and you're gone. That's it. Hey, there's you. Okay, you're done. And then, just so you people feel more included, like, hey, I'm born. Oh, life is so fun. I'm dead. It's just that quick. Life is short. You're in and gone. But here's the thing, like Febreze, there is this lasting effect. I don't know if you're getting this out there. It's a big room, but it's nothing but fresh linen up here. It's pretty nasty, actually. But life is short. Life is short, but there's this after effect of our lives, and our earthly lives are nothing in comparison to our eternal lives. How will you live the rest of your earthly life? It is nothing in comparison to your eternal life. It is so worth it to follow Jesus, to give him every moment of this short earthly life for the rest of eternity. What we give up here in this life, the price that we pay now pales in comparison to what we gain in eternity. My birthday was last week, and I turned another year older. And I used to say this thing like, tomorrow I'm going to wake up, I'm going to be an old man. It was a way of me reminding myself that, hey, life is short, make it count, blah, blah, blah. I don't even need to say it anymore. In my 40s, it's just happening. It's just I'm already there. I'm just like, yep, I've arrived. Okay. Let me make sure you hear this one key question. How will you live the rest of your earthly life? Jesus is worth it. Here's the last thing. Jesus is our real judge. Look at verse 5 and 6. Verse 5 says, But they will have to give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead. For this is the reason the gospel was preached even to those who are now dead, so that they might be judged according to human standards in regard to the body, but live according to God in regard to the Spirit. Jesus is our real judge. I mean, there's lots of people in our lives. Could be your spouse, could be your mom or dad, could be your son or daughter, could be your boss, could be your friend, your buddy. There's a lot of people that may judge you and condemn you. But you know what? The day is going to come where all those voices, they're not going to matter anymore. All those voices are actually going to be gone. And there's only going to be one voice left that we hear. One voice that really matters. One voice that is our real, true judge. And all we're going to want to hear right then is those like two powerful words, well done. Good job. Welcome home. And then at that moment, what are we going to say? We're going to know, man, the price that I paid to follow you, Jesus, it is so worth it. It is so worth it. Jesus would suffer, would sacrifice, and would give his life on a cross because you are worth it to him. Jesus would experience all of that, all of death, horrible crucifixion because you are worth it. You are worth it to him. And now is our time to say, Jesus, I will live for you because you are worth it to me. Now it's our turn to maybe suffer a bit, to pay a price, to pay the cost because he's worth it.